morning, friends. Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Coffee and Conversations. Glad you are here with me, whoever's out there. I'm assuming some of the regulars who's got their coffee or their Diet Cokes or their water, their beverages, and hopefully you have your Bible. Yeah, it's good to be with you this morning. Jill says, she's not drinking her normal coffee. She's got some tea. She's embracing her inner Brit this morning. So maybe I'm the lone coffee drinker today. Anyhow, or if Karen's here, then we've got another coffee drinker. We're going to go through Acts chapter 9, verses 19b to, I think we'll go through 25. There's a few different breaking spots in chapter 9 after Saul's conversion. So we'll just go and see. There's kind of a few different logical spots where you could drop, where you could stop, or keep going. ESV breaks it up into a bunch of different sections. And so we'll probably do two of them that they recommend or that they have. So, Jill already had her coffee. So now she's having her cup of tea. She had her cup of joe. Now she's having her cup of tea. And I've got my coffee. So just by way of announcements, the missions trip team is back. They got back on Sunday. And so you can be praying for them in their recovery. A bunch of them got sick on the trip. And so they're still in a variety of recovery. Some got sick towards the beginning, and then some got sick in the middle, and then some got sick at the end. And so pray for them to get better, to get well, so that way they don't have to keep dealing with this illness, whatever it is. It's not COVID. They all tested negative on that. So praise the Lord, because, apparently when you test for COVID, you have to do all these things that you don't have to do for other illnesses. So we want to pray for them to speedily recover. And then only other announcement I could think of this morning is that we're doing the playground installation and work party on September 7th and 8th. It's kind of like initial prep for the playground. And then the 9th, we are installing it. We are putting all the pieces together, and it's going to be like a big giant IKEA or Lego thing. We're going to follow instructions and do it, and we're going to get it done in one day. That's my goal, one day. And then on the 10th, we will celebrate getting it done that one day. And Lord willing, we'll have potluck, we'll extended fellowship where we'll grill some burgers, have some stuff have a couple guys man the grill. We'll do that, and we'll share and fellowship and celebrate this, the playground. It's a good thing to be able to have a spot for the kids to play. We're really excited. I know my kids are super excited for it. It's going to be great. So we hope that you'll plan to help with all those things. We still need a couple guys for the 7th and 8th, and then we need everyone's help on the 9th, whether it be helping with the playground or just church cleanup stuff. And then the 10th, obviously, we want you to bring food to share, and those appetizers and desserts and sides and all that stuff. So plan to participate in all of that. And then kind of everything is starting to kick back up for the fall ministry season. So branch groups will be starting back up. Women's Bible study will be starting back up. Awana information meeting or registration is a week from tomorrow. So August 30th, registration is, and then Awana starts on September 6th. So if you've got kids, we want them to participate. If you have neighbors that have kids, we want you to invite them and tell them about it. Nieces, nephews, grandkids, invite people. Let them know about it. Awana is a fantastic program, and we want kids to participate. So we would love for you to do that. And then, and if you want to volunteer, they always want more help. So those are all the things going on with that. All right, let's jump into Acts chapter 6, not chapter 6, chapter 9. Now, if you remember last week, we looked at the Apostle Paul's conversion. He put his faith and hope in the Lord. The Lord appeared to him in a miraculous way, and Saul puts his faith, hope, and trust in the Lord. He is blind, and he has a radical transformation, and then he is baptized. He regains his sight, and then he rose and was baptized, and then he eats. Shows how important for Paul it was to get baptized after his conversion, to show the transformation that occurred internally inside of him. He hadn't eaten 3 days, and he hadn't taken any water, and he gets baptized, and then he eats. We would probably say, hey, you should eat, but then get baptized. But Paul gets baptized first. He declares his conversion through his act of baptism. It's an outward expression of the inward transformation by the immersion of the believer in water. And so that word baptize means to immerse. It means to fully submerge it. Ships would be immersed. Ships would be baptized when they were sunk. When you were washing your dishes, you would submerge them, you would immerse them, you would baptize them. It's baptizo. It just means to immerse fully in water. And so Paul is baptized. He goes into the water, and he comes out, and then he eats, and they celebrate, and he was strengthened. And so after that, for some days, he was with the disciples in Damascus, and immediately, where we go? There we go. Immediately, he proclaimed Jesus in the synagogue. So his transformation is so radical that he, a trained rabbi, Pharisee, someone trained in Old Testament law, Old Testament rules, and living this amazing pious life, he is prepared already to go and share the good news, because he has this wealth of knowledge and information that the Lord has been building up inside of him to use for a specific purpose, to reach the Gentiles and proclaim before kings and to preach before synagogues. Paul goes and proclaims Jesus in the synagogue. So Paul has this radical transformation, and he is declaring Jesus to be the Son of God. Now, that is that's language of godhood and transformation. And he goes in, and everyone who heard him was amazed, and they're shocked that Paul is transformed, because they say, look, is not this the man who made havoc in Jerusalem? The one of those who called upon his name? Like, wait a minute, Paul, you've totally changed sides. Paul, what happened? Paul, why are you now proclaiming this thing that you used to oppose? And it says, and he was coming here. They knew why Paul was coming to Damascus. Paul was coming to Damascus with the intentional purpose of persecuting the church. And the Jews in the synagogue knew that that's what he was going to do. They knew his purpose was to come and persecute the church. And yet he is transformed. What this testimony, this change of life is evidence of his belief. And when we experience transformation, when we experience the new birth, it provides us an opportunity to tell people about what life was like before and what life was like afterwards. Now, depending on when you got saved, you might have been like, I was young when I got saved. I was 5 and I didn't really do anything bad, and my life was kind of just normal. And I grew up going to church. And so that radical transformation is not there, but we can continue to testify to what God has done in our life after the fact, and how he's been with us and carried us through. And so some people have these radical testimonies of God intervening in their life in such a way that there is a transformation of what life was like before and what life is like now. Like my life, like I used to be the pot smoking, street racing, girl focused guy. I was searching for pleasure in every place I could find. And then I got saved, and all those things, there was some unraveling to do, but those things went away, and I became a new person. Now, we all become new people when we put our faith, hope, and trust in Jesus, but for some of us, it's more apparent. One of my friends from high school who at the time was an atheist, he told me maybe like 6 months or a year after, he's like, I'm just waiting for the old John to come back. I'm like, dude, that guy is dead. He is totally gone. And so this is what we see with Paul. Paul is totally transformed. He wanted to bring them in bonds and bound to the chief priest. He wanted to handcuff them and take them back and throw them in jail. And they're like saying, "Hey, this is Paul. Who is this Saul guy now?" He says, "But it increased." Why do I keep? Sorry, I keep hitting with my hand. But Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who lived in Damascus by proving that Jesus was the Christ. So Paul's knowledge of the Old Testament enables him to tell people about Jesus. And once the scales fall from his eyes, he is able to say, "Hey, look, this all points to Jesus." He's proving that Jesus is the Christ. What is he using to prove it? He's not just saying it. He's using the Old Testament. He's pointing to and saying, "Look, do you remember Isaiah 53? Look at what it says about that one." It kind of sounds an awful lot like what happened to Jesus. And he says, "Hey, look, he's of the tribe of Judah." He's pointing people to Jesus through the Old Testament. That's how he's proving it to these Jewish individuals. This is what he's doing in the synagogue. Now, Paul is he's proving it and teaching them. But then we get a break, and there's this break here. It says, "When many days had passed, the Jews plotted to kill him." Now, in this point. At this point in history, Luke doesn't give us all the information about what happens to Paul. We know from other places in Paul's writings that Paul actually travels to Arabia during this point in time between his stays in Damascus. So Paul is in Damascus, and then he leaves to Arabia, and he's there for a while, and then he comes back to Damascus, fleeing persecution that is occurring to him there under the king of Arabia's oversight, and they persecute him. And so Paul goes back to Damascus, where he had established a ministry, and he's there for a little while, and many days have passed, and the Jews seek to kill him. But Paul learns of the plot. Paul learns of what is going to happen to him. And they were gathering by the gates day and night in order to kill him. So Paul is in the city, and they know, hey, he's stuck. There's no way for Paul to get out and get away from us. We have him in our grips. And what happens? They find out about it, and so they let Paul out through a hole in the wall. In this day and age, they would build houses into the walls of the city, and then there would be holes in the wall, or like there might be a square to get some air, or they cut a hole in the wall to let him out. This isn't like our traditional modern window, and so they let him out in a basket, and he escapes. This, friends, I think it shows us something important, that sometimes God wants us to flee persecution. Sometimes it is the appropriate response to flee persecution. Not always. Sometimes it's appropriate to stay and endure persecution. But in this case, what Paul did was totally within the bounds of appropriateness. He is not a coward for fleeing. It is revealed to him that they want his life, and so he flees. So he leaves. Sometimes that is the appropriate thing to do. Other times it's appropriate to endure persecution and even martyrdom for the believer. That is not always a clear-cut and dry answer of what is the best thing to do. So Paul flees and he heads to Jerusalem, and we're going to stop there because that seems like a good place to stop. So Paul's ministry in Damascus, that's where he is converted. That's where he's saved, or he's saved on the way to Damascus. And he begins to get discipled in Damascus. And then he heads to Arabia, and under persecution there, he returns back to Damascus, and he continues his ministry. And the Jews, they can't do anything about his testimony because he is proving to them, he is showing that Jesus is the Christ. And so since they can't do anything about it, they plot to kill him. Friends, the enemy uses underhanded methods and tactics to fight us. The enemy does not fight fair. The enemy does not fight according to the rules of engagement. There is no Geneva Convention when it comes to the devil. We need to be aware of his strategies, his schemes, according to the Apostle Paul. We need to know the schemes of the devil, and the devil will influence individuals to oppose us. And so we need to be aware of the devil's schemes, and we need to be aware of those who walk in the flesh and who are walking in opposition because of the blindness that the devil has caused in them. And we need to trust the Lord and remain faithful in it. Friends, we need to be faithful to testify to the goodness of the Lord and what the Lord has done in our lives, and point to Jesus, not to us. And so when we give our testimonies, when we talk about things, we need to make sure we are pointing to Christ and not us. We need to make it about Jesus. And so there oftentimes comes a point where we need to transition from our testimony to the word and about Jesus. And those are things that we need. Both are valuable. Our testimony is valuable, but it's the truth of the gospel and people responding to the gospel that saves, not people thinking we have a great testimony. So friends, we need to be prepared to share both and ask God for wisdom and opportunity to share them. So friends, I hope that you'll have an opportunity this week to share some with someone about the transformation that occurred in you and about Jesus, because as we see that it's these things, these words that the Lord puts in our hearts and opportunities he gives us, divine appointments and just opportunities he provides for us to share the good news of the gospel with others, and even sharing with other believers. Hey, look at what Jesus has done for me. Paul was with the disciples and he was proclaiming these things. I imagine the disciples would have been extremely encouraged by the fact that the transformation that occurred in the Apostle Paul, and it would embolden them to share with others. I hope you'll share with others with the hopes of them being transformed and the hopes of encouraging others. So friends, hope you have a great rest of your week. And if you need anything, you let us know and we will be praying for you. So this is John signing off. Hope you have a great rest of your week.